Okay, so I'm going to go over the basics of how to create a terrain. So if you don't already have one in your scene, you would click the little plus symbol here in the hierarchy, 3D object, terrain, and that will create a terrain in your scene. And I'm going to change the name of mine to terrain 2. And then positioning of this terrain. Um, Let me get the terrain that I already have right here. Let me put it like at negative 1,000 in X. There we go. And I'll bring this one over here. Put this one at negative 500 in X and negative 500 in Y. Let me also put this thing over here for this terrain. Negative 1,500. There we go. That moved it over far enough. Just to get it out of the way. I'm not going to worry about the fact that these two terrains don't line up. Later, I could show you a way that you could create two terrains that line up, and the second terrain that gets made will actually be connected nicely to this one. But I just want to, act as if you don't already have a terrain in your. Oh, and I just realized something too. Let me add. Yeah, I'll just move it over here for the moment. Or you know what? Better yet, put that back. Take my water, stick it inside that terrain. There we go. And then I can go ahead and put this terrain over at negative 1,500. Put this terrain at negative 500 like I want it to be. FYI. So um, now that I've got a terrain in here, got to select the terrain. The important things are these buttons up here at the top, and in particular, the second one, which is called Paint Terrain. We're going to spend some time there. It's on Paint Terrain where we're able to raise or lower the terrain. And besides raising or lowering the terrain, we're also going to be using Paint Texture. And when you first opened that up, when you first clicked on this, it might have been on some other tool. Uh, so do set it to raise or lower terrain initially so that you can be able to raise or lower a terrain. And then I want you to look at all these different brushes we have available here. And when I go to start to raise or lower a terrain, one of the first things I do is I make my brush as big as it can be. I set it to a maximum size of 500. And then I'll pick one of these basic brushes here and click and drag and increase my brush strength a little bit to like maybe 0.25. When I click and drag, I'm starting to pull up my terrain here. Now, I am going to leave the middle of my terrain. I'm going to leave that flat because that's where my airplane is, way down there at the bottom. I hit my W key. If I were to frame on that, there's my plane, down there. It's in the middle. I want to leave the middle of this flat. I don't want to raise up the middle because that's where my airplane's going to be in this. So now back on this terrain, I want to switch to a different tool, and I might even change it to a bit of a different size of that tool, and then click and drag. And I'm going to notice that I'm going to start getting some interesting mountains here with that particular tool. And I'm going to switch to a different tool and click and see what I get. Grab another tool. And besides changing the size of a brush or the strength of a brush, you can also change a brush's rotation. And changing the rotation will bring up a different kind of mountains out of the terrain. Now, I want you to make sure that you try many different brushes with many different sizes so you can create a variety of different terrains. Each of these brushes has a different effect when you start to use it, and it can also be affected by the rotation you give to the brush, and it can also be affected by the size that you give to the brush. And if you click and drag a whole lot, you might end up making big changes. Like if I click and drag a whole bunch, I can drive something right up to the highest point, and this is not really a good workflow. So using short brush strokes can help you achieve better success. And like I said, keep digging in here and finding some of these different tools, these different brushes, so you can get a variety of mountain types in your scene. Now, one student asked me for making a lake, and I'm going to set myself up in a place here, hopefully where I'll be able to give myself the basic. There we go. Yeah. This is going to be one of my bigger lakes. I've tried to make sure that I've pulled this thing up all around these edges here, but left a depression in here. So Rocio, later I'm going to turn that spot right there into a lake. Okay, later. Let me add a few more mountains over here in this last little bit that doesn't have any kind of mountains in it. And again, I want to keep trying my different tools that I have here, the different brush possibilities, because these different brush possibilities will create a different kind of mountain for me. Now, that's the basic long and short of raising mountains. Now, if you wanted to push something back down, raising up mountains is one thing, but if you wanted to, like if I accidentally go, oops, I put mountains in the middle where I don't want them. I don't want mountains there. That's where my airplane is. That's where my airport's going to be eventually. Well, to push that down, I'm going to switch to a harder brush, a harder edge brush, hold down my control key, and just like that, and I can get a bit of a feathered look if I use a feathered brush, but that right there can quickly flatten out. So you press and hold down your control key to flatten out. You click and drag to raise up, control key to push back down. So things I want you to focus on: using different brushes, changing the size of your brushes, changing the rotation of your brushes, and getting a variety of mountain types in, so that it's obvious that different tools got used to create these different effects here in my terrain. All right, that's going to finish off how to create a basic terrain.